Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the Underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The Underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the Underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Woo! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. As always, we are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each week. And this week on the show, Tony Gilroy talks Andor and its eerie similarities to our current world. That's certainly an interesting discussion. And Sam Witwer is providing some updates from Maul Shadow Lord. Super excited for that show, plus some Ask the SWU if we have time at the end of the show. My name is Chris. Joining me, it's my god friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, everybody. Yeah, very excited to be back. It's weird that there's not a trailer. I was expecting a trailer this week. I don't know why. I don't know what for. I was just expecting a trailer of some variety because that's how things have been going to start this year, which has been great. But no, this gives us a good chance to catch up on what else has been going on and let Tony Gilroy catch up with the conversation that the rest of us have been having about his show for the last year now, which that's nice too. So it's going to be a great show.
That is very, very true. Finally, it seems like he can talk about what we've all been saying, which is fantastic. Also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? It's good to be back. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy in the Star universe, and it's equally, if not more crazy in the real world. And yeah, so getting to talk about that and figure out why, and also having Tony Gilroy weigh in on this has been a fascinating part of this discussion.
Ben, I don't know if this is the earliest we've ever done this, but whatever you said, I'm sure it was interesting.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yes.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Star Wars rules.
This is momentous. This is exciting. Why, hello there, Ben.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
He is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Mr. Ben Hart.
How's it going, everybody?
Okay, so the fact that his face froze like that during that,
yeah,
it's tripping me out the whole time.
Top tier.
Yeah, I'm like, this is so bizarre.
We got the double, and now he's just gone.
Oh my gosh.
That broke Ben. We were having a great conversation about names before the show, and everything was good. And as soon as we started talking about Star Wars, Ben's internet said no.
I don't understand what the difference is between us uploading our feeds so that we can send it to each other to talk to each other versus also sending it to like YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitch and all the places we broadcast. Because it's like, when we're just before we start the show, there's never any glitches. It's very rare, very rare.
Yeah,
but then once we start, it's just everything starts crashing, and it's like doesn't make sense.
I think it's a sign that we've been doing the show for too long. I think they're like, podcasts aren't supposed to last 15 years or how. I guess we're coming up on 16 years now.
15.
15. Okay, 15 years. Yeah.
I was actually thinking about this earlier today. Funnily enough, I actually need to take a photo and say almost 15 years.
What's funny is throughout all of last year, because we wanted to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Star Wars Underworld as a whole, which of course Ben began as a Facebook page in that oversized closet that he records the podcast from, and we wanted to do that last year and just never did, because we could never get all of us together for the same show without there being something else going on, without there being a trailer or an episode of something to talk about. And so it just kept getting pushed. And I will tell you, Ben's not the only one who's been ready for that show, because I have a prop that has been sitting on the other side of this room, of this weird little studio that I record these from, has been sitting on the other side of the room that I've been waiting to bring out for this 50th anniversary show that Ben has been plotting. It's been plotting for over a year now. And it's just been sitting there. Just laying there, gathering dust, waiting for the day that we celebrate, well, soon to be 16 years of the Star Wars Underworld, because that's what everybody does. It's a big 16th anniversary show. So I don't know. We'll see if Ben ever comes back. Maybe we'll bring it out.
That's right. Sweet 16 for the SWU, 15 quinceañero for the podcast. So big numbers for this adolescent podcast of ours that is about to start driving.
Yeah. In a few years it can vote. Oh my god.
Podcast will be voting.
I can probably vote by the next presidential election.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We get a vote, right? That's
well,
what,
I mean, corporations can vote. If the Trade Federation can vote, then the podcast can vote.
The Star Wars version of the real world version of the Separatists instead of the Trade Federation and the Commerce Guild. It's just different podcasts. All just sitting around having a meeting with.
This is like the podcast awards. Yeah. Except instead of voting for a podcast, it's podcast voting for you. Wait, what?
Yeah. That makes sense.
That makes
look, I'm pretty sure Tony Gilroy basically says that in the interview. So we'll get to that. While we wait for Ben to come back, Chris, why don't we go through the plugs so that if and when Ben ever returns, we can just jump right back into the news.
Yes. So if you're watching us, please subscribe. We want to welcome our viewers on Instagram. On Instagram, it's called follow. Yes, that's the word on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram if you're watching us on Instagram right now. If you're on YouTube, you can chat with money and support us, and it'll guarantee that we make a big discussion about your chat. And then you can also become a channel member as well if you don't watch us live but still want to contribute in some way. And we really appreciate everyone that super chats with us, that is a channel member, because it does cost a little bit of money to run this program. And I don't know, maybe if we get a little bit more money, we can figure out a way for Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy, to not happen as much. But I don't know, it's kind of fun. So I think we're good.
Wouldn't that be nuts?
Exactly. But it's really important. So I appreciate everyone that does it. Is extremely necessary to keep us running with all the tech that we got going and all the subscriptions we have to pay for to send everything out to everybody every week. And you can also subscribe and review if you're just listening as well on a podcast app, like if you're watching on Instagram. And check out our Discord. We have a link to the Discord in the description. We got game nights, we got watch parties, lots of fun stuff over there. So make sure you check that out. And finally, check out all the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network. We've got the Raeside Ion Cannon. That I always try to breeze through that name, but it's almost like a tongue twister. It's hard to say fast. Ion Cannon, the Raeside Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, Tractor Beam, and more. Lots of great stuff. And of course, you can catch a few of those Ion Cannon and Tractor Beam right here on this channel. So you don't need to subscribe or search anything new. Just have the notifications turned on for the YouTube channel, and you'll get it when they go live. But if you want to check out Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, search them up on Twitch. And if you want to check out the Raeside, search for RAE side over on YouTube. That's the best way to connect with Hannah over there.
All right. Let's get into this. And Ben, I know you tried to talk about it earlier, but we will talk properly about it now. Tony Gilroy was interviewed by The Hollywood Reporter. It says one of his biggest interviews about Andor, about Star Wars, and about all things since the show came out. So, during the release of season 2, there was a lot of press. He was everywhere. He was doing all sorts of promos, doing a big part of the awards push. And then, he moved on. He moved on to other things. But now you get the sense that whatever remaining contractual obligations he had with the Walt Disney Company have come to an end. The final checks have been paid. The contract has ended. And now he can speak freely. And Hollywood Reporter points this out in the opener to this interview, where they reveal that during the promotional tour for Andor season 2, he was told not to use the word fascism. So if you go back to those interviews, I think he said authoritarianism a lot. I think he, used a lot of other stand-in words for it, but he's not afraid to say it now. He's not afraid to say it now. This is one of the things he says when talking about the real world parallels for Andor and, the world, and specifically America, in 2026. Tony Gilroy says, quote, "So you get out your Fascism for Dummy book for the 15 things you do, and we tried to include as many of them as we could in the most artful way possible. How are we supposed to know that this clown car in Washington was basically going to use the same book that we used? So I don't think it's prescient so much as the sad familiarity of fascism and the karaoke menu of things that you go through to do it. You could list them from the show or you could list them from the newspaper. In the beginning, it was very confusing. People were like, oh, you're psychic, or this show is prescient. But in the rearview mirror, it's really a much sadder explanation than that." He goes on to say, Gorman is Greenland. Gorman is anything. We want the rare earth. We want this. It really just is a crude laundry list of moves that they have. And my earlier answer stands for the way that it rhymes with Andor. Thoughts on what Tony Gilroy has said? Take it away, whoever feels like taking it.
Well, I think one of the things that's really interesting about television and film, and really a lot of art, is it takes a while to make these things. And so whenever we watch something or listen to something or read something that has taken a while to make, and it's just kind of bizarre that, oh, it sounds like somebody just wrote this last week, like South Park, about what's going on now. It's very easy to just kind of assume, oh, these people are just really clued into what's going on, and they kind of saw it coming before a lot of people did, and we're kind of almost writing this as like a warning. So that's kind of like the initial feeling I got, watching Andor, especially Andor season 2, was just like, yeah, I mean, this seems like it's about the current world. It seems like it's social commentary in a way that, like, Star Trek a lot of times is social commentary in its episodes. But the explanation does make sense that, the bad guys aren't really that interesting. Like, the bad guys are kind of the same. They kind of had the same playbook. They kind of do the same things. And so when you're just writing a show about an uprising against the worst sides of humanity, it makes sense that when systems fall apart in real life as that show is being released, it makes sense that it would seem similar, because they're both the same source, which is what happens when corrupt people use power to maintain and grow their power at the expense and exploitation of others. So this makes sense to me. I get his explanation. I think it's out of universe. I think the more interesting, or the point that I'm even more interested to talk about is why he was told there was one particular word that he couldn't use. Like that is a very intriguing thing. And I think that says more, kind of speaks more for anything than any words that he could say. Because like if you're Tony Gilroy, you can come up with whatever opinion and view you personally have on what's going on in the world and how it relates to your art. And everybody else has their own interpretation of that. And just one person's interpretation isn't necessarily the most relevant interpretation just because he's the showrunner. However, what is a fact is if an extremely large and powerful corporation, one of the most powerful corporations on the planet, feels it's necessary to tell one of its creators that when promoting something, there's a particular word that you can't use, it speaks a lot to the state of the world. And it almost kind of like proves that that view is correct, that there is an analog between the fictional universe that Andor takes place in and the real universe that it was created and released in. Because just the fact that there's a censorship happening of the word to describe what is going on. I mean, for me, that just says it all beyond what Tony can even add with his opinion, which I agree with. But again, I'm also understanding that that's an interpretation, whereas the other thing is like a fact. Being told you can't do something is not an interpretation of a situation. It's something actively happening.
Ben?
Yeah, and it's you saying that, I'm just thinking about the fact that like fascism, being against fascism, is now not just a political opinion, it's a partisan political opinion that somehow people are on the other side of. It used to be a thing we used to all not like fascism. Now it's become popular again. And we're basically stuck with the dumb version of Andor now. We are in Andor, but it's dumber, but it's real stupid. And that's what's fascinating about Andor is like you have really intelligent people on both sides. Not in this case. The dumbest people in the world are in charge now. Okay, that is the reality that we're living in. And that's the only consolation to like the fact that we are living. You can make these compilation. You can make these parallels of just like just in general. I know it's space fantasy. Andor is this big space opera thing that's connected to the larger Star Wars universe, and obviously we're living in the real world. Hard to make connections, but when you're talking about like, yes, people, the government, a governmental body is, killing, executing citizens in broad daylight. You can broad that Gorman, and what happened in Minneapolis. Like it's the same thing, just in different ways, shown in different ways. Both are awful, and I think, thankfully, I guess thankfully, I don't know, it's like I keep saying, like, the people, the Empire did all of that. They're very smart. That's the reason they got where they were. Whereas the people now, they're idiots. But they're still drunk on power. And, it is fascinating to look at this. And I like that Tony Gilroy has gone on this, and he kept saying this, kind of as a thing, because everyone was like, well, Andor in the real world looks things like that was already happening constantly during the press tour when he couldn't say the word. And he kept going back to like, yes, it does feel eerily similar, but also this has been happening for ages. And that's why all this goes back to just like history, unfortunately, repeats itself over and over and over again. And Star Wars has never shied away from political commentary. Star Wars is based in political commentary, but whether you want to believe that or not, that is a fact. George Lucas has been open about that. So it is just like this whole thing going forward, just like, I don't know, but I'm glad Tony Gilroy is like, clearly his NDA has run out. and he could just talk about this openly and say things like the clowns in Washington, which I love that line, and just be out and open about the fact and not tiptoe around this anymore, because I don't think any of us should be tiptoeing around it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I want to know the motivation behind saying, no, you can't, don't use the word fascism, don't use the word genocide. That was the other one that was barred from the press tour. Was it some sort of, just attempt to hide reality from everybody? Or was it an attempt to keep this show from getting drawn into just another round of the typical culture war stuff that we see with Star Wars shows, Marvel shows, Disney movies, everything, every big property that comes out gets dragged into this, with every side trying to claim it or trying to claim that it is indicative of the decline of society. And what's the last Star Wars show that came out before Andor? Well, it's The Acolyte. And that was a show that was doomed before it ever began, because people dug up old, comments that Leslie Headland and Montel Stanberg and everybody working on that show, or at least the most, forward-facing people said, and they turned it into something. They turned it into a movement against the show before it ever began. So the show didn't stand a chance. In the Hollywood Reporter article, they reference the Snow White movie, where basically the same thing happened there, which that was a fascinating one because you had two leads on very different sides of the political spectrum.
Yes.
And so, everybody could find something to be mad about with that one. So was the effort then to say, okay, don't give them the free ammunition. Don't give people the free ammunition. Don't go out there and say Palpatine is Trump and let it become a thing like that. Don't use those words that are buzzwords now. Let the story speak for itself. I think that's likely what was going on, because they didn't completely muzzle Tony and Diego and everybody. They didn't tell them to go out there and say, hey, pretend like this isn't based on anything. Pretend like it's just more silly space fantasy. Oh, isn't it fun? Which they've tried to do with some other shows and movies. They said, go out there and talk about your influences, please. Talk about the historical ones, talk about the comparisons, but for God's sakes, let the show speak for itself. Let it stand on its own, and don't get drawn into the muck of arguing about whether Trump is a perfect comparison for Palpatine, whether Dedra Miro is a 1-to-1 for, I don't know, Susie Wiles,
Pam Bondi,
Kristi Noem, any of the lunatics, who is Cyril Karn, Marco Rubio, or is he
yes,
or is he who's the Mike Johnson? Maybe he's Mike Johnson.
Don't insult my boy Cyril like that. Come on.
What kind of app does Cyril have on his phone and his son's phone to monitor what they're doing?
Oh my gosh.
Keep it out of the muck. Let people have that arguments on their own, because people certainly already did. But you stay above it. Don't give the grifters the free ammunition. And I think it succeeded. I think weirdly, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe I wasn't paying attention in the right places. But weirdly, I felt like this show, there was less contentious culture war stuff around it than a lot of the other recent Star Wars things, despite the fact that, as Tony is talking about in this interview, it's the most 1-to-1 for what is going on. If you were to just take people 20 years from now and say, this is what was happening in the world, and this is the show that came out, people will be like, oh yeah, it's an allegory. One's an allegory for the other. Absolutely, people would say that. But for whatever reason, it didn't seem like it got caught up in the blatant griftiness as much as, say, The Acolyte did.
I think,
again, I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. Please correct me if I am.
well, I think, yeah, I'm thinking about this. And I think what the case is it's not as much of Andor being special, it's the Acolyte being a special case. Because I think Andor kind of was received, at least from a political perspective, the same way most of Star Wars is, which is, you know, half the people thinking it's apolitical and neutral, and half the people thinking that it's political kind of with a certain bent and leaning. And so, whereas, so I think the Acolyte, it's comparing it to the Acolyte is more like just by the sake of the Acolyte standing out, because the Acolyte's creators had very political messages that you mentioned before in their past, not even necessarily marketing the movie, but just in their past. So the people kind of politicized it before it, you know, even happened. And you also can think of, you know, the fact that there's a lot more diversity in the Acolyte at the forefront, and that's more of a point of that, and diversity in the creative realm and the writers realm as well. So I think it's a bigger target for that. So I think if you had the same writers and the same showrunner and the same lead actor for Andor that you had for the Acolyte, but it was the same shows as they had been, then
wouldn't that be good?
I think that Andor would have been the one to get all the heat, even if the word fascism and the word genocide wasn't used by Leslie Headland.
Right.
Because I think those are the reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like let's not beat around the bush on this. You know, Tony Gilroy's an old straight white man.
Exactly.
Leslie Headland, a lesbian woman. Like it's that you know,
but
just
yeah.
People tend to target one over the others. Obviously, the sad history.
Yeah,
of,
and
everybody wants to talk. Everybody.
One part of this that I'll point out, and this. Sorry, I'll be done in a second. I talked earlier, so now you talk again. No, it's fine. One part of this that is important to understand, and it's in the fandom space, in the internet space, in regards to, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like Andor was really good. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, in the fact that like Andor was just like so solid that it managed to win everyone over, and like the general audience was on board with it, the critics were on board with it, everyone was on board with it. And I think when you have that, it's harder for the grifters and the naysayers and the bad faith people to get a foot in the door. When there's something like Acolyte, which is genuinely, I think, or even going back to The Last Jedi, taking something that is genuinely kind of controversial, and there's people that are split on it, and you have normal people that are just like, hey, I like this, I didn't like that. That leaves room for the bad people to come in and go like, well, actually, it's bad because Rose Tico, it's bad because gay people, it's bad because women, and all this kind of stuff. All this BS. And you know, that is the problem. And when there's something that's like everyone's on board with this being good and there's no like wiggle room there, it's harder for them to go on and say, well, it's actually bad, because everyone will shout them down. If somebody comes out and goes, well, Andor is bad because those two ladies kissed, who cares? The show's good. Like the people just think. But when you have something like Acolyte, well, they're like, well, I didn't like this and like that, so I'm sympathizing with your opinion, as bad as it may be. So that is ultimately the problem in unfortunately with Acolyte. It's like it wasn't a tight ship. It wasn't this tight show that just everyone loved. It was this more controversial thing, which sucked, because I think, you know, that's not an excuse for all the BS that it put up with. That's not an excuse for writing it off as so many people did. But it is a reason for why you see these different reactions, why things are the way they are.
It's such incredible pressure to make a Star Wars show when some of the Star Wars things that a lot of people have seen in the past is the best thing they've ever seen in their life. Like, so, you know, you look at Seeds of Mandalore, you look at The Empire Strikes Back, and it's like, oh man, that's one of the best things I've ever seen. Nothing tops that. And so as a result of that, you have to repeat that in order to not be criticized. And that's not a fair standard. You can't expect every single Star Wars movie, show, piece of media to be the best thing that everyone has ever seen. But Andor did meet that for a lot of people. I mean, I think there are aspects of Andor that is the best Star Wars that's ever been made. And so, yeah, that's fair. When you have something that has any bit of criticism, because it's not the best thing ever, because most things won't be, then you have people coming up with reasons for why something isn't good, and then the grifters, because it's rage bait and because it makes money and gets views, will start throwing out reasons that are really, really unfair and to about the people involved in the show, and not the actual process of the art of the show. Like, you can, you know, we do this all the time. We criticize the process of the art of Star Wars all the time. That's what we do. We talk about what we think just didn't work, and the writing and the editing and all the acting, all these things. But that's very fair. You can do that with anything, and that there's nothing unethical about that. Art critique is a part of life. But that being said, what is out of bounds, and should be seen as out of bounds, is saying something is bad because of an inherent quality of the person making the thing or involved in the thing. It shouldn't be bad because, oh, this character is gay, or this character is a woman, or this character is a person of color. That shouldn't be the reason why. And again, tokenism shouldn't be injected as an attack, saying like, oh, you know, they're just forcing, you know, non-straight white characters into the story, which makes it bad. That doesn't mean anything. You can't reverse that so it doesn't hold water. You can't say people don't say every time that there's a story with a straight white male character in it that's not that good of a story. They don't say, oh, it's because they forced this straight white male character in. If they just had that character be a woman, it would have been okay. Like, it doesn't work both ways. So it's not a valid logical critique at all. It doesn't work that way, despite how people, you know, grifters try to make it sound that way to get attention. And they're lying about reality when they do that. So again, moving back to Andor and the point of the conversation there, and to answer the earlier thing that you brought up, Dominic, which is this kind of theory of, you know, did Disney just want people to not formulate political opinions about the show before watching it, and kind of doom, you know, it to some criticism before, you know, people came into the cave with, you know, and didn't leave it, you know, outside the cave of Dagobah. I think that, you know, I think it comes down to the fact that Tony was still allowed to, you know, say words like authoritarian and vaguely compare it to the modern world and say, oh, there's some parallels here, but not use words like genocide and fascism, is because we've gotten to a point where there's an effort to politicize those words. Like, Ben, I think you might have mentioned earlier that, and the other words haven't been politicized yet. Like, you can still say something as authoritarian or totalitarian or this or this or that. You know, you can still say that, and people don't know kind of what side you're coming through it from, which probably used to be the case with words like genocide and fascism. Like, I think when I was growing up, fascism could, you know, be interpreted kind of more broadly. But now that we're faced with it, now that it's actually here and it needs to defend itself, those words can't be used to describe it anymore, because it casts light on things that, you know, power doesn't want light to be on. So I think it kind of comes down to not necessarily like making the show apolitical from the get-go, but not not trying to make the show sound partisan.
Mm.
I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, because those are partisan coded words. Now, the reason why I personally disagree with this, even though I understand the point of the strategy of you kind of coax people in by not telling them it's a mirror to their face, and then they see themselves and maybe they might realize how hideous they look. I get that strategy, and it might have worked. However, I think that is a small concession after making a very dangerous, bad choice, which is deciding to make partisan words that shouldn't be partisan, and allowing something that's called the Overton window, which is basically like, this is very far left, this is very far right. Society, is it in the middle? Is it kind of over towards this side, over towards that side? It allows the range of discussion, mainstream discussion, to shift off the rails into an extremist direction by saying it's okay, it's wrong to criticize as a partisan. It's wrong to have the critique of saying something's fascist or something is genocidal. I think that because I think that's what Disney is saying. It's saying you shouldn't be allowed to critique something using those words, which then acknowledges that one side is those things. And I think that's more damaging than allowing it and then making the concession of, okay, we're doing this as a strategy to get more people to watch, create less controversy so that the art permeates society more densely. I don't know if that's worth it to do that.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, I'm not agreeing with what they did necessarily.
Yes.
I was trying to understand
No.
why they might do it, and I was trying to understand the case they might make to guys like Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna, who are very outspoken about their beliefs. What we have learned about the Walt Disney Company in the last year. Sorry, Ben.
Go ahead.
Let me get this point out here. What we've learned about the Walt Disney Company in the last year is that they are a bunch of cowards. I don't know necessarily what Bob Iger or Josh DeMauro or Dana Waldron or anybody else at the top level of this company necessarily what they believe. But I know they are scared to death of doing something that will upset the current regime and that will upset the people who follow and support the current regime. We go back to the Jimmy Kimmel thing. We go back, which unfortunately is one of the things that tarred the first Mandalorian and Grogu trailer. They are afraid. They are acting out of fear. And I think that case that they would make to Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna of let your art speak for itself is one that they make after they have already decided to say no fascism, no genocide. Don't say those words in your press tour. I think they then think of, okay, we have to justify this. How do we justify it? Let the art speak for itself. Because I don't think they care about the art speaking for itself. I mean, look at what they've been doing in the last few years and look at their like fascination with like, oh, now we're just going to fill up Disney Plus with user-generated AI slop. And they're not interested in that. They are interested in what will make them money. That's what they're interested in. And they want to have the broadest level of appeal to this show. And so they're like, don't say the buzzwords that we have decided, as you said, have become partisan, even though they shouldn't be. So don't say those buzzwords because that will trigger this response that we know is out there that we've experienced before when we did let those buzzwords get out there. So we are afraid of you impacting our bottom line by going out there and going, yeah, no, there are comparisons. Yeah, no, when you watch those scenes in Gorman and you hear those, the like horrified broadcasts of at the end of that episode of, won't somebody out there do something? You know, that was, I can't remember what that character's name is, but she has that line. It's like, yeah, don't go out there and say, no, you hear something similar like that coming out of Gaza right now. And you know, they don't want them to say that. They don't want you to be thinking about that. They don't want the audience to be thinking about that. They want the audience to be just lulled into more funny space adventures, because that's safer for them. They think that's going to affect their bottom line less, and that's all they care about in the end.
Which, in a sense, is fascism within itself.
There you go.
Which brings up the whole irony of the situation, where, like, you have the fact that perhaps Star Wars was more ideologically pure when it was just George Lucas at the top, and he was very anti-studio and like, this is my message. I'm not going to let anyone alter that. But at the same time, Star Wars becoming part of a larger production studio allowed something like Andor to get made, which, you know, might not have happened. There probably would be no Andor show if George Lucas had not given Star Wars to Disney.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting kind of paradox there. And it brings up the question of, like, how much do you need to play in the system to speak out against the system? And then it brings up the questions of, you know, what's the difference between critiquing an individual versus critiquing a system itself that's trying to protect itself? And so, you know, one example that I think of is, you know, a studio coming to the musician Sarah Bareilles and saying, why do you have to write these songs about these things that no one's going to relate to? Can't you just write another love song? And she says to them, I'm not going to write you a love song. And they said, yes, write a song about that. And she writes a song, I'm not going to write you a love song because you asked for it. And it became a very popular song as a result, because people thought it was about a guy or something. So, but it's not. It's about the studio. So, you know, it brings up that question of, like, how much of Andor is about Disney, and how does that play into things? And it's like, it's like, okay, yeah, we can allow the fact that the system has allowed Andor to happen and taken apart and creating the infrastructure for Andor to happen, but also critique it for trying to shut down its message a bit. Like, that's
I'm
fair.
condemned
Both
to
worlds can
use
exist.
the tools of my enemy to defeat them.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Nailed it. Yeah, they're just, you're talking about that. I'm just reminded of a funny moment at Star Wars Celebration all the way back in 2016, actually, during the Rogue One panel. And I think Riz Ahmed was talking about, like, you know, being within a system and trying to, like, work against it and do something interesting and exciting within a system. And whoever was in charge of, you know, the camera and deciding what image was on the live stream and was on the screen, then cut to Kathleen Kennedy. It was like, what are we talking about here, Riz? And the audience, I remember the audience in London, we all kind of noticed and we started laughing. And I remember Riz going like, oh, you don't have to get all judgy about it. Like, he sort of like realized he had to make a joke all of a sudden. But, yeah, man, it's fascinating stuff. And it's the interview is well worth the read. Ben, I know you've been a little hampered by technology here and a little bit of lag, but do you have any thoughts you want to get in here before we maybe move off or move on to the next bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you guys kind of nailed it. You know, my only thing I'll add here is, like, I think ultimately you could in a good faith, perfect world scenario, you could make the case for, like, well, maybe we do just want to let the material speak for itself, when ignoring all the fact that, like, this is a business decision, like they didn't want to wait until all the culture war stuff, like what we've been talking about. But, like, if you want to play devil's advocate and say, like, well, maybe this is a creative decision, you know, ultimately you could kind of make the case for, like, well, you know, people, when you're, like, doing this and presenting this in a way, you want people to think about it. You want people to have discussions about the material, about these shows, about Andor in particular, about what this is. And, holding a mirror to people or just like showing them in a different way, in a space fantasy way, you might get to a few people. You might make a certain people think about like, well, what am I supporting? What I'm supporting seems to be kind of what the Empire is doing in this show. Maybe I should rethink my things. I don't personally have that much hope that anybody that is currently supporting all this is that introspective, but who knows? I mean, I don't want to give up on anybody. Star Wars is in it of itself about redemption too, so I don't want to give up on anybody, but the world is a dark place and there's a lot of people cheering it on. So like ultimately it is just this case of like, you don't want to beat somebody over the head and be like, this is what you're doing. Palpatine is clearly Trump. It's like, no, he doesn't. This should speak for itself to a certain degree. But there's like some people need to get beat over the head with this stuff, and they need to. And there's been a lot of great discussions about this online, going like, the rebels. MAGA is clearly like we're the rebels. Like, no, guys, no, you're not getting it through your thick skull. You're not the good guys here. Okay, you're not with your red hats, your stupid red hats. You're not the good guy. You are not the rebels. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The 80% of that I got through the technology was great. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, Ben. No, I definitely see where you're coming from on that, and do not disagree.
And I think I'll say really quick to end.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important to not underestimate how many Finns are out there. How many people that are a part of a system that's doing bad things that really aren't fully aware or awake to it. And one of the most important purposes of art, in my opinion, is to show people things that they might not have experienced yet in front of them in their lives, so that they can make better decisions knowing the fuller context of, what the world is and what humanity can be. And so I think that, yes, there's plenty of very entrenched people that are fighting on the side of evil, that are going to be swayed by a depiction of what they're doing in a sci-fi universe. But I think there's a lot of other people too that are not that are ignorant to what's really going on around them and what they might be contributing to. And I think seeing any type of depiction of that in any accessible way is a positive thing. I mean, I have to say that watching TV shows and movies and reading books is a huge part of why I am who I am now, and why I make the decisions that I do. So, and that's regardless of whatever, if it was fighting with or against my background in various, areas. So I think, I think it's very important. I think it's very important to keep making that type of art. But I do also think it's important to allow the creators to speak about it. When I first heard that, George Lucas say, I feel like Obama is like a Luke Skywalker like person in real life. When I first heard that, because of the background that I came from, I thought, how could he say that? I don't see that at all. No one around me thinks that that President Obama is like a Luke Skywalker like person, is a hero to that extent. And so, but I think it's important that George Lucas was allowed to say that, and that I was allowed to hear that, because it showed me that there were other perspectives that I hadn't considered. And I think that was very important. And now knowing so much more about history than I did when I was a teenager and first heard that, I'm like, I understand why George Lucas said that. I understand why he thought that. I wouldn't say I fully 100% still agree with it, but I don't. It's not as wild a thing to say that I used to think. I'd like, okay, yeah, aspects of that I completely get why someone would think that, and aspects of that are definitely true in certain revenues because certain avenues because it's a very complex thing to compare these two things. So in the same way, I feel like now, if I was a kid now and I was still learning about the world and learning about geopolitics and all these very complicated things, I would still want to be able to hear Tony Gilroy say the word fascism and the word genocide. And even if I didn't understand why he was saying it and it confused me because of what I knew about the world at that point, I think it would be important to kind of continuing to open my mind to different points of view and having ultimately a more nuanced point of view of myself that includes more perspectives and shifts my perspective more towards whatever the truth of the matter might be.
Yeah. I would always rather know what someone thinks than what they don't. Agree or disagree. I would rather hear what Tony Gilroy actually thinks than get the muzzled PR version that we got. Now, I will say credit to Tony. He did a pretty good job of working through that muzzle and getting his message out in interviews. You could tell what he was alluding to, even if he was stopping short. And it goes beyond him, right? Mark Hamill has said a lot of things over the years, some of which I agree with, some of which, especially lately, don't agree with a whole lot. And I think Gina Carano is a moron, but she's allowed to say what she's going to say. And I'd rather know that than not know it, what she thinks. I wish she'd, change her views. I wish she'd come around, but it's better to know. I always think it's better to know than to not know. You want to talk about the Disney marketing muzzle not working. There's a test case for you. Let's take us back to season 2 of
Some people just don't know when to shut up.
Yeah, but that's that. All right. Sticking with this Tony Gilroy interview. They did ask him about a rumor that's been floating around the internet about the new Lucasfilm president and chief creative officer, one Dave Filoni. Here's how Hollywood Reporter frames the question. They say, quote, Dave Filoni is now co-running Lucasfilm with Lin-Manuel Brennan. He's a George Lucas protege who's known for being a Star Wars purist. I asked him a few years ago what he thought of Andor, and he had nothing but praise for your work. Adjectives like brilliant, fantastic, and great were used. However, The Wrap recently reported that he wasn't a fan of Andor, something Lucasfilm immediately denied. Did you ever sense any creative or philosophical disagreement from Filoni? Here's how Tony Gilroy, who remember is now unmuzzled. Here's how he replies. No, we only met a few times and we've only had a half dozen conversations over the last 10 years. Seriously, I saw Jon Favreau at a scoring session once. We've always gotten along with those guys and we've never had anything but high praise for everything that they've done. We only have our show because of them, and we've always said that was true. There's no Andor without The Mandalorian. It would not exist. So it has never been anything but cordial and pleasant, ever, 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 ever. I don't know anything that you don't. I really don't. And then there's a little writer's note from the Hollywood Reporter. They say, writer's note, the internet created a similar rivalry between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams during the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Abrams recently hosted a Q&A for Johnson's new movie, Wake Up Dead Man. So I think here's what I'll say real briefly on this. I don't think there's like a situation where Dave Filoni looks at Andor and goes, that's a bad show. I believe him when he says things like it's brilliant, it's excellent, all those adjectives that Hollywood Reporter uses. Fantastic, great. I believe him when he says all that stuff. Do I think Andor is the kind of show that Dave Filoni would make? Absolutely not. I don't think Dave Filoni would ever make a Star Wars show that didn't incorporate the Force in a major way. And I think he doesn't see Star Wars. He's not interested in a Star Wars that's like Andor, where the Force really only gets mentioned in like one or two episodes. That's just not Filoni's bag.
Yeah.
He is much more into the spiritual, philosophical side of it, whereas Tony Gilroy is into the political, philosophical side of it. So I don't think there's any sort of like stupid rivalry. Like I don't think if Dave Filoni had inherited Lucasfilm while Andor was still on the air, he would have canceled it, or anything like that. But I do wonder if we'll see another show like that under him. I hope he's smart enough to realize that Star Wars needs every type of story imaginable to be successful and continue to be interesting, because stories need to be refreshing and exciting. So I hope he would do that, but I don't think when Dave Filoni sits down and imagines a Star Wars show, I don't think he imagines Andor necessarily, even though I do think he probably looks at it and goes, damn, that's pretty good. Because even you look at Dave Filoni's version of Andor, right? You look at Rebels, the episode 1, got a lightsaber in there. Mm-hmm. It turns into a Jedi training show. And by the end of it, we're like, hey, what if everything is happening across time and space all at once and can be accessed from one non-existent plane that is not even a plane, it's between the planes, and you're like, what? I feel like I need so much drugs to understand this. So that's Filoni, and we love him for it. But I hope he also is open to shows like Andor.
I think the thing that
tenureship
makes me feel good about that, and I agree with everything that you said, and I think that the whole hoax about them having an issue with each other is so dumb.
Oh, it's
but
so
the thing that makes me feel good about Filoni is that the Clone Wars, despite the overarching story of the show being very spiritual and philosophical, like you described, there were so many episodes and arcs that were in so many different genres of that show, and some of them were more similar to Andor in that way. And so I think that George Lucas definitely ingrained in Filoni the concept that Star Wars is very diverse genre-wise and shouldn't always have the same tone. And so I feel like Filoni will be a wise curator of Star Wars and allow for there to be different tones, just like as the showrunner for the Clone Wars, he allowed different episodes to have, writers and directors coming out of so many different genres to come in and make their mark in the Star Wars universe.
What episode of Clone Wars would we say is most Andor like? I'm not like, this isn't like a criticism. I'm just sort of thinking about this. One that comes to my mind, because I was trying to think of like the political intrigue episodes of Clone Wars, and those weren't always the greatest, Senate murders and things like that. But Heroes on Both Sides in season 3 is like really good, and it gets into some of this same space, and Ahsoka is in that episode, but nothing about that episode relies on her being a Jedi. Exactly. She's in it, but it's an episode where a lot of things happen despite what the characters are trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of same story with like the Onderon arc as well. Like there's still the Force in it, but like again, it's not necessarily, we're not saying like a Star Wars devoid of the Force completely, because again, even Andor mentions it a little bit. What we're saying is a Star Wars that isn't centrally focused on this mythology of the light side and the dark side of the Force going at it with each other. And certainly the Onderon is not about the Sith versus the Jedi per se, or the Mortis or the World Between Worlds, or any of these more fantasy aspects of Star Wars. It was very much a real.
It's literally got Saw Gerrera in it. So
exactly. There you go. Yeah.
And just like Tony Gilroy, like I think Tony Gilroy would honestly be more extreme in his like take on Star Wars, that he's not interested in the spiritual side of it. I think he was he's been pretty open about that over the years. And even he was sort of drawn in eventually with that with the healer character in season 2, and felt it was important to include it even in a small way.
I mean, I will say this again, just in case. I mean, I don't want to say it that way. I know that there's got to be people that listen to our show that will later in their life be involved in writing something Star Wars. It's got to be.
Yeah.
We certainly know that many of our show friends have at various points worked on Lucasfilm projects. So I will say it again just to get this opinion out there with the hope that people will listen. When George Lucas made the original trilogy, the pillar, the thing that started everything, it wasn't within a tone previously set by something called Star Wars. it was other things that he was influenced by that then he brought into his own universe. And so while again, it's cool when there's callbacks and references to things and things that connect things together and continuations of stories, those are all good things. We want cohesiveness in a universe that's the same universe. At the same time, as far as the actual storytelling is concerned, let your influences come from outside Star Wars and bring it in. That's where you get things that are fresh and interesting. That's where you're creating something new rather than creating a derivative of a derivative of a derivative. And then it kind of loses its punch.
Yeah.
It loses its novelty and contribution to thinking, to the world, to experience. In that case, it loses a bit of its power in that when you're just kind of rehashing the same thing by referencing the same thing. So that's why someone like Tony Gilroy is so amazing, because he comes in to Star Wars with the idea of, I'm going to let a lot of things influence me that aren't Star Wars and bring it in. And I'm not going to be bound to this kind of core concept that is a through line in a lot of Star Wars. And I'm just going to ground my show in the Star Wars universe, in the story of the rebellion. But from a tonal point of view, from a material point of view, the influences come elsewhere. And I think that the vast majority of the lines written in Star Wars scripts and the should also come from an influence outside of an idea you get when you're just watching Star Wars and thinking, oh, it would be cool if this went here.
Yeah. 100%.
I think if we were talking about Tony Gilroy being the new president of Lucasfilm, I think that would be your time to be concerned about like more of the same, like more of like what Tony Gilroy likes in Star Wars, and then like everything being like, if you're concerned about everything being like Andor, some people want everything to be like, or if you're concerned about that, I think that would be a legit concern. The flip flop,
I want everything to be like Andor. I would like everything to be of the same quality.
Well, that's a different discussion. That's a different discussion, okay? But you know, the quality and tone, different things, in my opinion. But like, you know, I think on the flip side of that, the reality of the situation is just like, I think Filoni's more than proven himself to be very open-minded about this kind of stuff. So I think and a lot of people, I don't know, maybe everything will be, you know, everyone's, you know, everything's gonna have cameos and everything's gonna have Ahsoka, and I'm like, guys, I hear what you're saying, I just don't believe it. I don't think that's how Filoni rolls. I think Filoni has been someone who has been highly influential in a ton of different Star Wars projects across the entire company for many, many years now. I think it's just gonna be maybe a little more obvious. Not much is going to change. I think we just talked about this on the transition episode, talking about this whole announcement, just being like, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot change. I don't think it's going to be like a left turn. I think you're going to see, obviously, things will gradual things, but I think ultimately, I think we'll see another series like Andor. Not Andor again, but something in the vein of Andor. I think we will see again. Perhaps in the near future, I think.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. We'll move off of the last Star Wars show, Andor, and on to the next one, which is Maul Shadow Lord. So Sam Witwer is starting to do the rounds, talking about what is to come in the new series. Most recently, he's featured in an interview in the second last issue of Star Wars Insider, single tier.
Don't
number,
remind
236. Me. Yeah. So this is what he's asked to describe how Maul has changed over the years. Because remember, Sam Witwer's been playing this character since, I guess they would have recorded the episodes around 2010. And they start coming out in 2012. He says this about Maul and how he's evolved into the character we meet in Shadowlord. Quote, he's confused and a little apprehensive. We pick up after the Clone Wars. The Empire is taken over and Maul's reassessing everything. There were plans in place that were supposed to insulate him from changes when the Empire came to power, and a lot of people that were supposed to be there for him were not. He's getting back on his feet, and the dust is clearing, and he's looking around at the Empire, the thing he and his master had been working towards since he was an apprentice, and thinking, is this what Palpatine had in mind? How do I feel about this? He also talks a little bit about how Maul's opinions of Emperor Palpatine has changed. He says, quote, Maul understands that that guy is the root of his suffering. In Shadowlord, he sees it even clearer. Everywhere he looks in the Empire, he sees Palpatine's hand. If Maul's going to shake his fist at him, he has to believe he's somehow superior to Palpatine. If he's not, then he deserves everything that's happened to him. Ooh. Ooh, very interesting. Ben, what do you think of what Sam's saying here?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of my most anticipated aspects of Maul Shadow Lord is getting more like obviously Maul smoking some fools with his double-bladed lightsaber, like that's gonna be cool. But if there's like just one episode of Maul just sitting around going like, well, here's my opinion on the Empire. Here's how I feel about the Order 66 and the downfall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Like if we get some introspection with Maul, I will be very, very happy because I think that's an interesting aspect. Is like, that is what you're kind of in for, of just like the whole concept, the whole idea of this character who was supposed to die is now here, and he's continuing to live on into this new era. The whole idea of Maul being around in the Imperial era is something that I think a lot of us fans like never even thought was possible. And I think now that we're actually getting it, and not just in a quick cameo or a quick guest starring in Solo or Rebels, like actually giving him his own show and his own spotlight to explore this in detail. That is something I want to see. And like the whole idea of just like him looking at the Jedi a little bit differently. His relationship with Chief Palpatine is very interesting. The fact that he really hates Palpatine, like the last thing we saw him do is basically just go take over a planet to screw over his old master and just like try to kill somebody kill Anakin just to piss off his master. Like, that's Maul's game now. And I think him kind of stepping back and taking a more methodical approach to this, I think very, very interesting. So I'm loving what Witwer has been saying all this time, and in particular what he's been saying more recently. This is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, as exciting as Maul Shadow Lord is going to be, getting like every week or every couple of weeks new interviews with Sam Witwer talking about this show, I feel like that's the bonus. That's dessert that comes with the meal.
That's pretty good.
And I think it's
pretty good.
Pretty good dessert. Chris, any thoughts?
We get so many stories about the heroes versus the villains. So villains versus villains is always interesting to me, and I'm always excited for more of it. So I love the idea of Maul versus Palpatine, and also a less direct way where it's Maul's system versus Palpatine's system. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course we're looking forward to Maul Shadow Lord coming up in April. Not quite next month, but very, very soon. It will be next month. Okay, I want to touch on this story. This is kind of interesting. In Variety this week, they published a editorial / behind the scenes look at what is going on with Disney now that Josh D'Amaro is taking over as CEO, and it goes into a little bit of what D'Amaro's like as a leader, what his style is. They talk more about why Bob Chapek failed. They talk about how he won over, or how he won this job over a lot of his competitors for this role, or his fellow candidates. And they also go over what a lot of the challenges facing him are going to be, and they touch on the big franchises that Disney has. So they talk about Marvel, they talk about Avatar, and they talk about Star Wars. And there's a couple of intriguing tidbits about what is going on behind the scenes, and what Disney is currently thinking about what is going on with what they are doing. So this comes from Variety. This is what they say, quote, "Internally, there are concerns that an unconventional 36-second Super Bowl spot for The Mandalorian and Grogu that featured the title characters riding in a wagon pulled by tauntauns failed to generate the kind of excitement that the marketing team was hoping to spark. The film is something of a question mark, given that it's based on a streaming series and consequently may not seem like a big screen proposition for any but the most die-hard Baby Yoda lovers. There's a sense that Star Wars Starfighter, a spinoff from Deadpool and Wolverine director Sean Levy, is more likely to satisfy fans when it hits theaters next spring, with sources who have seen footage praising Ryan Gosling's performances and suggesting that Levy has recaptured the franchise's spirit of fun." So,
interesting.
I know you guys talked a few weeks ago after the Super Bowl about the Tauntaun spot. We talked a little bit about it last week. Are you surprised at all that Disney? Are you surprised that the response has scared Disney? And also, are you surprised that Disney is surprised by this?
I'm surprised they're surprised by this.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there definitely was after watching The Last Jedi the first time reaction to this TV spot of like, what did we just see? Was that it? Was that the thing? Was that the thing that we just been hyping up?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta process this. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Okay, it's fine. But what? It's a little confusion and recalibrating after that because of expectations. Which, sometimes a lack of expectations becomes expectations within themselves, which we learned with The Last Jedi. I just had that epiphany now. I'm like, how, when we were told to not have expectations, did we still have expectations that were ruined? It's impossible. It's impossible. Sorry, creators. It's impossible. Say nothing or everything. It's impossible. Set people up. So, that being said, I think what's more interesting is comparing these two movies, because we've never heard them compared before. We haven't really heard much about Starfighter in general. So it's really great to hear some inside thought on that, to hear some progress on that, to hear the first opinion of its quality ever. That's really, really, really exciting. I think that here's my concern. Here's my concern with The Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't want to go into it thinking it's a movie. And I think if I do, I think it's going to be a problem. Because despite the fact that technically speaking, it's a movie, technically speaking, it's in theaters and it's of a length that is a movie length. And technically the budget is close to the budget of a movie. It's a short season of The Mandalorian, or a long episode of The Mandalorian that we're going to get to see in the theaters. And The Mandalorian has a different vibe than the movies. It's close, but it's not the same exact thing. And so I feel like if Disney acknowledges that and says, isn't it fantastic that our top streaming show that launched the entire Disney Plus explosion that happened for a few years, isn't it amazing that show is going to have what essentially is a television movie that is also in theaters? Isn't that cool that we get to make even more money off of this? Because even if people are subscribed to Disney Plus, they're still gonna pay for a ticket to see this too. Like this is the win. They would have spent that much money anyway to put it as a TV movie on Disney Plus. Like all the TV movies they put on Disney Plus, and then now that's not on Disney Plus anymore because then people stop watching that. They just made money by selling it to somewhere else. But looking at you Star Child or whatever the name of that movie was with Grace Vanderwaal. Yeah, I think that's a healthier approach to it, because then I think with those expectations, I think whatever we get, I think it's gonna be better, because I think if you go in expecting it to be Rogue One or the Phantom Menace or the Force Awakens, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna quite hit like those things, because it's not in necessarily that universe of Star Wars. So with that being said, I think it is very fair to say that Starfighter might have more of a movie type appeal that's more similar to the appeal of something like Rogue One, and kind of hit a similar audience and make similar numbers. I think that's a good observation, but I think the reasons why are completely off. I think saying like, oh, the reaction to the trailer was not great, and we're concerned that people aren't really as hyped for this movie as we were hoping they were gonna be. Like, I think, and I would think that Ryan Gosling's gonna bring it home later in the decade. I think, yeah, I don't think that's it. I think this is like the Clone Wars movie. It's just a little bit more expensive. It's more expensive than the Clone Wars movie, and it's being done not as the pilot, but as the 4th season, which means that it's probably going to be better in quality, and it's going to be better received than the Clone Wars movie. But I think that's a better thing to compare it to. It's a better thing to compare it to. If this thing makes more money than the Clone Wars movie, it's a success. That's what I'm looking at, which is $80 million, I think.
It is fascinating, because like, to me, like, that was my takeaway from the whole Tauntaun, Super Bowl TV spot thing, was just like, yeah, I'm excited for the movie, but it's kind of a bummer that, like, instead of talking about, ooh, yay, Mandalorian and Grogu, new teaser, we're all like mired in this like really toxic discussion around like, well, is the teaser good? Is it not? What are they doing with the marketing? Blah, blah, blah. Like all of this really, in the weeds stuff. And we're not just like being excited about the movie. I know for a lot of people, I heard a lot of feedback that people were like, that general audiences were like really responding well to it. I hope that's the case. It is interesting that Disney seems to be, as they always are, very reactionary to like what the fandom thinks and like what we're talking about on a daily basis, and like what that means for the movie and stuff like that. It kind of surprises me. I feel like they're very, they at least they should be very confident with the Mandalorian Grogu. They have a solid property. They don't have to sell anybody really on it. They just have to remind people, hey, this is happening. It's coming in under budget. It's a movie that is ultimately cheaper. They have a better option of actually like making a profit on this and like going forward. So like it is surprising that they're like, well, Starfighter is going to be the one that is actually going to make people happy. I'm just like, have a little more confidence, guys. I don't think it's going to be that bad.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add real quick too, before I hear the amazing thoughts that I know I can see formulating in your head, Dominic. I'm excited to share this. But the other thing I want to add too, to set the table for the conversation, is the mention of the diehard fans of Baby Yoda. Okay, I'm gonna say something here, very, 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 very hot takey. Okay, it's not like you have all these Star Wars fans, and then within the big group of all the fans of Star Wars, you have this kind of small group of people that are like the Baby Yoda fans. The Baby Yoda fans, the Grogu fans, are a different category. You've got Star Wars fans here, you got Baby Yoda fans here. They're not the same. So the people that really, really like Baby Yoda, and that's like their favorite Star Wars thing, they might not and probably wouldn't watch anything that did not have Baby Yoda in it. And so it's a different audience. It's a completely different audience, and that's key. So if a lot of Star Wars fans don't turn out because they're not diehard Baby Yoda fans, that's not a problem, because this movie is also being marketed to a different group of people, which are people that are primarily Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who grew up with The Mandalorian. That's their version of Star Wars. There's just too much stuff now to go back and be interested in the prequels and the original trilogy and the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series. And like these people have not seen these things. Like I very commonly over the past 5 years in the wild, if I'm not at a Star Wars convention, if I'm at work or at some social event or whatever, Star Wars comes up. About half the time, if I'm talking to someone younger than me, I've never seen the movies that came out before like the 2000s. I might have put one on and I like fell asleep. Like that's they don't care about the general overall Star Wars saga universe and this kind of like Star Wars super fan thing that we've been in for our whole lives and saves at this point. Like they're like, I just lit the Mandalorian and I like Baby Yoda and maybe I watched Ahsoka too, and that's where they're at.
Yeah.
And those people will turn out for the movie, of course, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's just to piggyback on that. Here is a genuine, true story from this was a few years ago from a previous job that I had. There was someone that I worked with that I clocked early on, like, oh, like on their water bottle, they've got all these Grogu stickers. Like, that's cool. Yeah. And then we did a Star Wars day at work. It was Star Wars day. And this person brought in the, like, that Mattel Grogu toy that everyone has, this like life size. And despite not being like perfectly accurate, it is like spiritually accurate. And it's become like the stand-in for Grogu. It's almost better than like the actual one when you see it in person and not on screen. They brought in that and they had made Grogu like a name tag that matched our like security IDs and stuff. Like, it was great. And I said to them, I remember saying to them, like, oh, I love what you've done with Grogu there. And like, yeah, I'm like a big Star Wars fan. And I showed them my Rebel Alliance tattoo and they said, oh, I've never seen any other Star Wars. I just love Baby Yoda. Like, that's literally what they said. Like point. Word for word. And I remember like, and this was like 2022, maybe 23, somewhere in there. It like hit me in the face. I was like, I've never heard somebody say that about anything. Like about like, oh, I don't really like Star Wars. I just like Chewbacca. Like that. It didn't, I'd never heard that, but this character inspired that level of fandom. But here's the thing about the Mandalorian and Grogu Super Bowl spot is I think the response to it is not necessarily a response to that trailer. I think you're right when you say it's a response to the expectations, but what I think it really is a response to is how bad the first trailer was, because that trailer, Disney, like we say, Disney has a tendency to listen too much to online fandom, and online fandom, because it is online, is chronically online. And if you spend all your days talking about Star Wars, eventually you kind of run out of things to say about the stories that exist. So you start speculating about things that we can't really know. And that then becomes, the conversation becomes, well, why hasn't there been a Star Wars movie since 2019? Why haven't these streaming shows all been as smash successful as Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 and Andor season 2? And it gets in, and we get into these conversations about the general audience. I am certainly guilty of that. See my rants about BBY. But it's which is still stupid. I will still die on that hill. Anyways, you get into this conversation of we want there to be more Star Wars because we like it, and we like having new things to talk about, and we like having new movies to go and see, and we like having new shows to watch on streaming service. And we understand that for that stuff to happen, there needs to be more, that it needs to be successful. For there to be more, the current stuff needs to be successful. And look at Solo. A lot of people liked Solo. Decent movie, a lot of fun. Would have loved a sequel. Sequel didn't happen because not everybody went and see it. The world didn't go and see it. So people are concerned, whether they admit this or not. But I think so much of this conversation comes down to the fact that people are concerned that there won't be new Star Wars if this movie and Starfighter aren't successful. And a lot of things that people would like to see hinge on this movie, including the Dave Filoni movie, whether it's a movie or a miniseries. So people are like, I want to see more Star Wars. So they then go into that trailer, that first trailer, not going, hey, what would I like to see? Like what would make me excited? They go, what would this hypothetical general audience like to see? What do they need to see? Because the reality is, we all say this all the time, we don't need to see anything. We don't need to see a trailer. You tell me what day, you tell me what time, I'll be there. I like the trailers. I wish they did more of them. But you don't actually need to convince me to come and see this movie. So people are, so we're worried about this hypothetical person that is not really a person. It's an amalgamation of all people. And you watch that first trailer and it's bad. It's bad. Whether you like Mandalorian already or you don't, that trailer does nothing for anybody. It's boring. It looks like it's like when a sitcom does a fake clip show and they flash back to other episodes, quote unquote, that didn't really happen. That's kind of what it felt like watching that first teaser. It's like, here's a bunch of stuff that could just be from the show, tells me nothing about this movie other than it exists. And it was so bad. Yeah, it was so bad that they recut it when they to put it in front of Avatar, because they realized, oh, this is going to be in front of a huge audience. We need to show them something that will actually be exciting. And the new version is better, but it's not great. It's better though. And so people are disappointed by that. They're scared about the future of the franchise. Scared is maybe too strong a word, but concerned. And you hear, okay, there's going to be a Super Bowl trailer, and you're like, yes, Super Bowl, massive audience, everyone tunes in. This will be the thing where they want to distract people from that super boring game that was happening, and say, here's something super exciting that you will all love. And what do you get instead? This weird Budweiser, right? Chrysler,
yes,
Dodge,
Budweiser.
Budweiser. Okay, it's Budweiser. It was a beer. Yeah. It was either a beer or a
Dodge
truck.
Still exists.
I don't know. It was beer or a truck. It was one of those new. Something
because those things always go together. They're always drinking beer in the truck commercials, and they're always in the truck in the beer commercials. So
exactly,
might as well be the same.
I during the Super Bowl, I tuned in to the real halftime show, and I saw that guy singing about how he wants to drive his truck and drink his beer and feed his dog and kiss his fish. So I know that's what real Americans want.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What was I getting at? Right. That thing comes out, and you think what should have just been a funny, hey, remember this movie is happening, becomes you're not convincing people to go and see it. Then the real trailer comes out. And the real trailer, as we spent a lot of time talking about last week, is good. It's really good. It's a great trailer. And it gets everybody excited, whether you like The Mandalorian or you don't. There's so much crazy stuff going on in there that's exciting, that's interesting, that's intriguing. It gives you hints at the story, gives you hints at the character arcs, everything that you need to actually sell a movie, which that first trailer does none of. None of. This one from 2 weeks ago does it. So that, I think, is I would like to know what the Disney insiders' reaction is to the reaction to that trailer, because I think that gives them a little bit more confidence than their weird little attempt at a Budweiser parody, because Disney is still trapped in this idea from 2015 that, I'll just say it, a bunch of boomers and a bunch of Gen Xers pushed that I don't want to see any spoilers. I want to go into Star Wars like I did in 1977, not knowing anything about it. And guys, that's not how the world works, and that's not how most people see Star Wars.
And the trailers for Star Wars explained everything that happened in the movie too. Just people didn't see them.
Exactly.
They spoiled everything back in the day.
Yeah, but that's not how these things work anymore. That's not how things work anymore. And I don't blame people for wanting that. I'll be honest. I totally understand where that POV comes from. I understand that lived experience, and I understand wanting it. But that's not how it works anymore. People come across Star Wars a bajillion ways, whether it's Disney Plus, whether it's YouTube, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's whatever. You come across it some other way. You have a preconceived notion of what Star Wars is. You cannot recreate that feeling anymore. And so they have been trying to do that by not saying anything about the plot, anything about the story. They've been trying to protect that for 2 years now, where they've been shooting this movie, and we've all just been left to wonder, what could it be? And people look at the state of the world. People are engaging in doomerism because that's all we know right now. There's very little reason for optimism because nobody gives us a reason for optimism anymore. New trailer comes out, finally answers some of those questions. All of a sudden, you see the tone shift. Again, I'd like to see what the Disney insiders think about that, because now I feel like there's a lot more optimism going to this movie because that trailer was great. It gave us everything we needed, and it fits in with the fact that so that's won over the Star Wars people that were worried. The Baby Yoda audience exists, and the people who are lucky enough to not be chronically online are just going to go to a movie or be looking at TV or looking at YouTube and see this commercial or see a Mandalorian and Grogu TV spot in a pre-roll before a YouTube video or something and go, hey, that's exciting. I really like that. That's fun. I can't wait. That May 22nd, because I remember it being at Avatar a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, and the recut version of the original teaser play and the shot of the AT-AT falling off the cliff in beautiful laser IMAX 3D. And I just remember a guy a couple of rows in front of us doing the fist bump. Like, he was so excited. He was so excited. Just did the fist pump in the air. And that's what you want. So I think this movie's actually in a pretty good shape. I suspect it might actually surprise us in how it feels more like a movie than even an extended episode of The Mandalorian. And all it really needs to do is set the table and say, look, Star Wars is back in theaters. It's exciting. Don't we all enjoy this? Now come back next year for something completely different and completely original. And we got a great director, we got a great actor, we got a great cast. Come see it. Come back for that. And that's where you're going to see something new and different and exciting. And that's where I think the this is all going, and that's where I think there's a lot of reason for optimism, because I'm feeling hopeful. That new trailer really did give me the injection of excitement that I was looking for this movie, and I will see I will see the rest of my time.
No, it's fine. Like, one thing I want to add to that is, like, weird how, like, the expectations of all, like, the overall expectations of, like, I'm one of those chronically online weirdos. I see all the things, but also I talk to people, and, like, it seems like the overall opinion on this movie is either it's going to be okay or good, or it's going to be underwhelming. People are underwhelmed by it. That's kind of the most negative opinion I've found on this thing. It's like, I'm not really excited for it. It's not the trailers aren't doing much for me, all this kind of stuff. And to the opposite end of the thing, not anybody saying, like, this is gonna be the best movie ever, it's gonna be the best movie since The Empire Strikes Back. It's just gonna be like people going, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be like The Mandalorian, but it's on big screen. I'm cool with that. And I want to, like, be very positive, because I'm over here being like, what if this movie is unexpected? What if this movie is even better than we are thinking it could be? What if it actually does blow us away in a certain way? What if it actually does have a really good word of mouth? What I think really helps movies these days, especially, is to have that good word of mouth being like, hey, I saw that movie, it was good. Like, I'll trust that, somebody telling me a movie is good, over any critic's review, over any type of Rotten Tomatoes score. If someone tells me a movie is good and I should watch it, I will go watch it. If they also tell me it's bad and I shouldn't watch it, I definitely will go watch it. But, like, I think I don't want to hype anybody up, because I want to be like, look, if you're underwhelmed, I don't want to hype you up because you might be disappointed. But it feels like we're in a situation where people are kind of like, okay, maybe this movie's going to be good. There's kind of only up from here. People are kind of have their expectations, and they're kind of down here. And if the movie comes in and really nails it, you could be working with a movie that's very successful and a big crowd pleaser. And I hope that's what Disney's thinking. I hope that's what Lucasfilm is banking on, the fact that it's like, just deliver a solid movie and that pleases people, and it'll make bank.
Mm-hmm. It's a few minutes ago, Chris, you said, like, you brought up The Last Jedi and the expectations around that movie, and ever since that movie, because I first saw The Last Jedi. It didn't scratch the itch. I was not happy with what it was. I've since come around on it. I've since come to appreciate it, and when I watch it, I like it a fair bit. But on opening night, expectations were so high that when we got a good but flawed movie, it wasn't I couldn't see the good. I could only see the places where it fell short of expectations. And so ever since then, I've been trying to be I've tried to keep expectations in check going into the movies, and tried to remember on first viewing that how you feel on opening night won't necessarily be how you feel 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years later. These things evolve, we grow, we change, yada, yada, yada. With this movie, because, as Ben has said, expectations seem pretty low, I'm daring to get excited for it. I'm daring to have not necessarily expectations, but like I'm daring to just go into it going like, yeah, you know what? It's going to be good. I'm not gonna engage in the doomerism. I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's a stupid idea. Season 3 was not as good as seasons 1 and 2, and therefore this movie is gonna be bad and all this stuff. I'm going into it going, you know what? It may not be the greatest movie ever made, but damn it, I bet it's gonna be fun. I bet it's gonna be good. And honestly, that trailer, it really does have me thinking it actually has a real shot at being something special. Again, I'm not going into it the way we went into The Last Jedi, thinking like, I bet this is going to be it. I bet this is going to be the best one. But I'm going into it. My attitude right now is, you know what? Screw everything else. I want to be excited for a Star Wars movie, so I'm going to be excited for this one because it's the one that we got. We're going in. We're going to play the game with the team that we have, not the team that we wish we had. And that's what I'm feeling like.
Yeah, I it's funny. I'm doing the opposite. Yeah. Because I don't want to be disappointed. I'm going in with like, okay, this will be an average episode of The Mandalorian. It'll be enjoyable. The the only parts that I know I'm gonna like are gonna be when Embo's in it. Like I'm convinced that any second Embo's on the screen, it's going to be the best Star Wars ever made. But the thing is, that's only going to be a certain percentage of the movie. I can't expect that to be more than a few minutes. I'd be happy. I'd be overjoyed with 10 minutes of Embo in the movie. So I can't. That's just it brings me to the theaters to see Embo. Of course, multiple times to see Embo, regardless of how I care about this movie. Even if I really don't like it, if I get to watch Embo again and again, I'll see it 5 times, 10 times for sure. It's very important. It's very important. I also want to throw a side note in because I wasn't here last week to be part of the Embo discussion, which I'm hoping happened.
It did.
Good.
It did.
But as a side note, if it didn't come out last week, despite me just loving Embo is also very sentimental for me because it is over mine and Ben's shared love of Embo that we met each other.
Yes,
and that's very, very, very important. Because that as soon as I saw Embo, I thought I need to create a Facebook page dedicated solely to the love of Embo, and somehow Ben searched or found that page and started talking on it. So that happened 16 years ago, almost 16 years ago, in a month and 10 days or so. So yeah. So anyway, opposite. I've kind of just general expectations. I kind of expecting an average episode of The Mandalorian because that makes sense. Baseline average Mandalorian, same creators. That's a good expectation. I'm not expecting the best episode of The Mandalorian or the worst episode of The Mandalorian, but an average episode of The Mandalorian. That's a movie. With hopefully at least a minute or two of Embo on screen to keep me going back and watching just that part over and over again because I know that will be great.
Real quick, both of you, off the top of your head, best and worst episodes of The Mandalorian.
Oh my gosh, the episode directed by the Spider-Man director of The Mandalorian.
Which episode is that?
The one with the space spiders.
Oh yes.
That just did not get me at all. Like and yeah, that episode I just did not. There's something about episode just didn't it didn't land for me at all. Best episode, probably the deep fake Luke Skywalker episode. Probably that was just freaking amazing to see.
Yeah, Ben.
Best definitely the Jedi episode of season 2. Worst, my goodness. I mean, we just watched it in the marathon thing we're doing on Discord. It's kind of fresh in my mind. It's I want to say Hired Guns from season 3 because I still have a vendetta against that episode. But I actually don't think it's the worst. I think it might actually be the Gunslinger from season 1. Even though it's not a bad episode, it's probably just like the weakest episode.
Fair. I think for me, best. For me, best. That's the Toro Calican episode. Who could forget Toro Calican?
Yes.
Right. Top episode. I'll say the Marshal from season 2, the season 2 premiere, and worst episode is that god awful bird hunt from season 3, where Paz Vizsla's kid gets kidnapped and they go and kill a bird for some reason, and nothing happens.
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
There was so much potential for interesting things, and they're like, "Hey, what if we did none of that?"
I haven't thought about that since it aired.
I think about it every day. No,
I'm
far more likely to think about the Marshal every day because I really, really like that one. Really like that one. All right, there we go. So that's where we'll leave the news. We'll do one quick Ask the SWU here because Joel submitted a super chat, and it says, "You ever wish the Star Wars movie slate post Disney buyout could have started with movies like Mando and Grogu and Starfighter instead of a sequel trilogy?" What do you think?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I love an excuse to talk about this again because I try to not talk about this ad nauseum because this is the broken record that I keep playing. I love to keep playing. Because this is one of my most opinionated opinions in Star Wars, and certainly my most opinionated opinion in Disney era Star Wars, which is I continue to be very frustrated and annoyed that it feels like they created 2 different Star Wars universes. Like it just annoys it annoys me, and I hope at some point they kind of merge them back together. I feel like they will. They have to. We're getting movies kind of in both the eras, in the future. But just it's just like both of them at this point feel like half of Star Wars, and neither feel like whole of Star Wars. And Star Wars doesn't feel whole when you combine the 2 together because they really don't have much to do with each other. So like. That's the issue. So having more Filoni and Favreau movies is going to help the Mandoverse feel more like a full thing and not just a bunch of TV shows. And having the Rey movie and hopefully some more shows in that era around then will help the sequel era finally flesh out and feel like more than just 3 movies and some books and 1 animated show that was short lived. So I think it just boggles my mind to this day that we just got 2 very distinct Star Wars universes to the point where one literally has a universe named the Filoniverse or the Mandoverse or the Favroniverse. It's literally one thing, and then you got the sequel verse over here, 2 completely different things. Like I don't care which one comes first. I just want one complete, one or both of them to be complete. That's all I care about. And if we had to start with Mando and Starfighter first in order for that to happen, and then we got a full complete 10 years of Mandoverse era movies and TV shows, and then we moved on to the sequels and the Ray Pin. Yeah, we're just gonna call them Pin stories.
Ray Pin and Foe.
Yeah, Ray Pin and Foe stories. Then sure, that's great. But what matters to me more is not the order, but like it being a complete thing and not being like split off.
Ben?
Yeah, no, I mean, ignoring the fact that like the whole point of Disney buying Lucasfilm and restarting and doing all this was an effort to like take advantage of the fact that Mark, Carey, and Harrison and like all those guys were of the right age to come back and like doing all this and like doing a sequel trilogy was inevitable. Ignoring all that, let's just say that like they wanted to just spin-offs. Let's put the old stuff to the side. Let's put the old characters to the side. Let's just do something new, which I think maybe in retrospect they maybe would have wanted, because like something that I've always pointed out is like most people's reservations, not all, but a lot of people's reservations, like a majority of the things that people throw at Disney Star Wars as things that they do not like is how they treated the older characters, how they dealt with the established plot lines and characters versus the new stuff. There's problems with the new stuff too, and there's stuff that people don't like about those. See The Acolyte. But for the most part, people don't have as much expectations. Speaking again to expectations, people don't have as much expectations in regards to new characters, like The Mandalorian, like Skeleton Crew, like, whatever else. So, if they had just done that, I think maybe people's the opinion of the universe overall might be better. I don't think it's in bad shape now. I think, like we were talking about last week, the sequel trilogy made like $4 or $5 billion. Like, it made a lot of money. It was very successful and people love those characters. So I guess mission accomplished, but it would have been interesting. I think, maybe maybe that's something that I would like to see more of. Speaking to Chris's point, just like, maybe I do want like a more unified front of just like, let's kind of combine things and put it together. But also like, if that were the case, then we wouldn't have Andor. We wouldn't have a lot of these things. I think the outlier stuff, some of it has been the best stuff. So being able to have this expansive universe and do some things together and some things apart and do different things and do legacy stuff, bring in the legacy characters, but also do something with completely new characters off doing something else, I think, is the strength of Star Wars, not a weakness. And I think playing into that, I think has been. So I think for better or worse, I think we're where we need to be, where Star Wars needs to be. We could talk about, alternate universes all day, but I think ultimately what's happened has happened. The sequel trilogy is the reason we are now here with The Mandalorian, Grogu, and Starfighter as the next two movies. Like, this is history. It's here to stay. You just got to roll with it.
Yeah, I think you needed to start with the sequel trilogy to answer Joel's question. This is going to sound more glib than I mean it to, but to get it out of the way. Because if you had started with something like Starfighter or something like Rogue One or something like Solo or Mandalorian or anything like that, the constant question would have been, when are you going to do 7, 8, 9? When are you going to bring back Han, Luke, and Leia? All of that stuff. I think you do that, you get it out of the way, and that now opens up the opportunities to do Mando, Grogu, to do Starfighter, to do everything else. And so I think that's from just sort of a logistical, again, here's that word again, expectation standpoint. I think they did it the right way. We can sit here and debate all day, as we have, whether or not they were successful in that. But that was the way to do it, because like it or not, the numbered movies loom over everything. And even as we are sitting here talking about all the expansive spin-offs and the Filoni Favreau-verse and the Mandoverse, like whatever, all that stuff, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, yeah, but what's going to happen in episode 10? Like, that's still there. That's still out there. But it would have been far, far, far more prevalent with an episode 7 if there were Star Wars movies without 7, 8, 9. So there we go. That's that. So thank you, Joel, for the question. And I think with that, we can begin to wrap things up for this week.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching, for listening to the show. make sure that you punch that subscribe button, Chewy, on the way out of here, and follow us on social media at the SWU. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting. Glad to have you back tonight.
Oh, it was great to be back. It was a lot of fun to talk about everything that we talked about. It's really interesting, that the conversation around Star Wars can almost be as interesting as the conversation about Star Wars, right? Like, we've spent very little time actually like dissecting the story of Star Wars. We didn't get into what was going on in Andor episodes so much as a conversation around Andor, and I think that is a very interesting sort of like side plot to all of the Star Wars conversations that we have, and that is what then leads to the all of us freaking out over trailers and that sort of thing, of whether they're good enough at convincing people to like this show, because we want people to like it. But it's been fun, and I can't wait to be back and do all this again in 7 days' time.
Dominic's on social media at DominicJ25. Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well, and braving all the communications disruptions to continue broadcasting.
There has not been an invasion yet, as of this moment. So communication disruption does not mean invasion, at least for the moment. So we'll see how that goes. But considering the things that I said on this podcast tonight, you never know. You just never know. You never know. Could have something beating down my door any second now. So let me get this out right now. Speaking of The Mandalorian, be sure to join us on the Discord tomorrow, Friday, or maybe as you're listening to this in the future, it may already soon be happening. We will be watching, we just talked about it, The Marshal. We will be screening The Marshal in the Discord. And I should mention also, you don't have to queue it up. You can just show up in Discord. You don't have to have Disney Plus. I screen it through my computer, which is something that probably Disney does not like. Probably. I'm just going to go ahead out there. They probably do not like that, but I don't care. I share with everybody. So come and join us. Watch The Marshal with us. It's going to be a long. It's basically the Mandalorian movie part 1. Like it's the first Mandalorian movie. It's the Jon Favreau directed episode of The Mandalorian. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with that, and probably nothing else. Probably that'll spend all of our time. We'll just watch that one episode.
Listen. Netflix 316 in canon of tweets is love is sharing a password, and that goes for all streaming sites.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, Ben, as soon as you said Disney doesn't like, I was like, there goes our invite to the Mandalorian and Grogu premiere. Darn it.
I would much rather they be listening and hear me say, what did I say? Oh yeah, Star Wars should be less derivative. Yes. Hear that, Bob Iger? I will gladly not go to the premiere of a movie if you take that to heart. Wait, Bob Iger's not the CEO anymore. Now I gotta be talking about Josh. Hear that, Josh? This is weird. It's weird talking to Josh. Hi, Josh. Let me introduce myself. I'm so used to talking to Bob Iger. Bob Iger's tired of passing my messages along to Josh. Not seeing through you again.
So I listened to one of the episodes that I wasn't on. It was when you guys were talking about Josh Tomorrow and taking over. And at one point, Ben said his name, and he really drew out the duh in Tomorrow. He's like, Josh Tomorrow. And all I could think about was that Josh Tomorrow's name could be Josh Yankees lose tomorrow.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's what... They've been thinking that for 2 weeks ever since Ben said that, or 3 weeks now. So just had to get that thought out of my brain so now I can move on with my life.
We have to remember that baseball is like Minecraft Manhunt. It's not about who wins. It's about making sure the Yankees lose. That's the most important thing. Just as much as basketball is about the Lakers losing. And football is about the Cowboys losing. There we go. Made all my enemies. I don't know enough about hockey to know who the Empire of Hockey is.
Well, I do. And sadly, they are my team. But they always lose. They always lose.
Maybe,
so it doesn't...
Maybe things have changed with that one. Maybe the penance has been endured. But I will say, as long as Jerry Jones is the owner of the Cowboys, their penance is not.
Well, fascists always lose, so...
I don't know, Ben. If we're gonna talk about hockey, I spent a lot of time looking at pictures coming out of the White House and not feeling like, not feeling so
well,
good about
you know
the
what?
sport.
We're just gonna forget that men's Olympic hockey exists. That women's Olympic hockey is the only Olympic hockey sport.
Yes, absolutely.
That's very important.
Enjoy your
notion.
cold cheeseburgers, you winner losers, dudes.
It's the fact that the FBI director was in the dressing room celebrating with them is the weirdest thing ever seen.
I mean, the FBI director could be from pro wrestling at this point. I don't even know what qualifies one to be an FBI director these
They're
days.
all dumb.
Makes about as much sense. Makes about as much sense. Yeah, but yes, no. The only Olympic hockey medal that we acknowledge is the women's one, and even then, I was very sad about the outcome of that game.
Oh, I'm sure. It's very fair. It's very, very fair. Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess we also care about Man U losing. I don't know. For the international.
Gosh darn them! Oh.
Darn the Manchester United.
Yeah.
Evil empire of football, international football. Okay. Oh yes, this is what I was gonna say. Since I was gonna say, Ben, the only social media site that Ben is legally on is Threads. So please follow Ben and the SWU on Threads.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah. Please check that out. I want to remind everybody about our Discord. Check that out. Is it game night or watch party tomorrow?
Watch party. Mandalorian.
Amazing. And we've gotten past the worst episode too, so now it's all downhill from here, or uphill. I don't know how that works. So check it out. And of course all the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, the Raeside, Iron Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, Tractor Babe, and more. So that's it. Thank you everybody so much for watching. We'll be back next week for Dom and Ben. My name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.